give you. So there are loads and loads of different things. And I think, Natasha, they're just keeping your mind stimulated is really important. And particularly, we're quite lucky in some respects with smartphones in that we can, I've got a friend who's learning a language, just using one of the free apps you can get. Just keeping your mind stimulated is so important.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is, because a bored mind, in a way, it is almost the best environment for worries to, we talk about ruminating, and that means going over and over and over and something in our minds. So actually, distraction is incredibly important to stop us going down that unhelpful sort of cycle of thinking, which can happen. The other thing I would say is, whilst for some people they've really taken this self-isolation thing, they've really grabbed it and thought, great, I can do this, I can tidy cupboards, I can learn a new language. Actually, for other people, that they might not be motivated in quite the same way. And so setting unrealistic goals is not going to be helpful. So again, if you're not somebody who particularly thrives on that, or who would get excited about doing something like that, don't set that as a goal. Be realistic with your goals. They don't have to be life-changing. They don't have to be big goals. They can be quite simple ones. And whether that's learning how to cook something quite simple, or even just doing a simple routine every day of getting up, doing a bit of cleaning, doing the odd 10-minute bit of exercise or relaxation, whatever, they are as important. So we've got to remember that these goals don't have to be massive, life-changing things that we have to do while we're on lockdown.
Natasha, thank you so much for joining us. And over the next few weeks, we will be featuring people in the Cotswolds who are making the most of this lockdown, and really with the aim of helping you to just really develop some routines and some things to do. We had Daisy, who was a gardener, from home last week, and we will continue to have people on the show over the next few weeks, just to try and keep your mind stimulated and try and ensure that your mental health is as good as it can possibly be. So Natasha, thank you so much for joining us, and look forward to hearing again from you soon.
Thank you. Could I just add one more thing? Sorry, which I think is really important. Apologies. I said I would come back to social media. I think it's really important that people do limit their access to the news and social media, because that is certainly one thing, particularly if people are on their own, that can fuel any worries. So that will be something I would encourage people to build into their structure, is a limited use of watching the news and things.
Natasha, on that very, very sound advice, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Dr. Natasha Connor there. And it's really, really important you look after your mental health and just make sure that you're staying stimulated. We will ensure that we continue to keep you up to date with the support that is out there. We'll be doing that as a district council through these shows. But please make sure not just looking after your physical health, but also your mental health. That's really, really important. We're going to go to some questions now, and what we're going to do, we've had quite a lot of questions about the garden waste service and the waste service more generally. What we're going to do, we're going to hear from Councillor Andrew Doherty in about 5 or 10 minutes. He's got a pre-recorded update he's done, and he answers a few questions on there. What we'll then do after that, we will focus on questions about the garden waste and the waste service as a whole. At the minute, we're going to focus on the business grants and some of the other questions not related to waste. So, Mike, first one for you. This is from Jane Davies on Facebook. We are a very small family-run manufacturing company who have lost almost all of their customers as we supply the hospitality and automotive industry. I have tried to access grants, but I've been told that as my rateable value is above the threshold, we are not eligible. I have been trying for 2 years to get a rates review with no luck. We are struggling as we are both over retirement age, and as my husband is over 70, I'm having to shield him. Apart from ourselves, we have one full-time and one very part-time employee. We have furloughed both of them. There seems to have been no help for very small companies above the rates threshold. Is there anything I can do? I am reluctant to give in, as we've been manufacturing here in Bourton-on-the-Water for over 35 years. Really difficult one, Mike.
Yeah, I feel for people like Jane running businesses like she is. I think the first thing I would say is, Jane, you may well have done this, but if other businesses in your situation go to the G1 LEP, they're there to advise businesses on what support is out there. I'm sure you've scoured across the government's website. Obviously, you mentioned about your rates valuation. If you think you have a case for that, then go to the valuation office and seek to get that adjusted. I think clearly if you find that there's, from all of those things, you can't find any support at all within the current structure, then I would recommend you to get in touch with our Member of Parliament and tell him about your situation and the fact that you don't feel that you're getting the support that you need to take you and your business through this crisis. Obviously, because he has potentially the ear of ministers and he can raise that on your behalf with government.
Okay, we've got another question here from the Keeper's Arms in Quennington, I believe. And so, please can you tell us when our government grant will land? Paperwork has been completed.
It obviously depends when you fill the paperwork in. As I mentioned earlier, from the point at which we processed it, it takes 2 days to get into your bank account. So in this example, if you would like to email revenues@cotswold.gov.uk and ask that specific question about your circumstances, or myself or Joe will pass it on to them. So yeah, we can't obviously answer about a specific case, but if you contact directly, I'm sure we'll get you the answer, and hoping it'll be very, very soon.
Okay, we've got one here from Nigel Payne. We're a family-run independent shop. We submitted our online application on 1st of April, called CDC on the 14th and was told to wait until Friday the 17th. When we called, we were told that they're only answering phone calls and they're not, and these aren't the ones for processing payments. We received our final email on 15th of April confirming that our business grant application was being assessed and would be processed ASAP. Haven't heard anything since. Emailed again today. This was submitted on Monday, so yesterday, and told to wait until Friday, 24th. If no payment is received, we've been told to call or email on Monday, 27th of April, and potentially could be told to wait until Friday, 1st of May, having submitted our application electronically on the 1st of April. How is it fair that businesses who applied earlier still appear to be waiting for payment than those who have applied later? Fair question, I think.
Yeah, I mean, lots of dates in there, which is quite hard to follow. But in essence, what I said earlier was, if you applied by Monday, Thursday, by April the 9th, the money, and there is no issue with your application, so we haven't come back and queried it, or we don't have any issue with your bank details, then the money should be in your account by Friday of this week. So that's what our officers, we've looked very carefully, and that's what we believe we can deliver. I think there were some questions around when people got paid. It will depend whether there were issues with all their forms, with their bank details. For some people, we already had the bank details, so we had all the information, so we were able to process those more quickly. And we've pushed as much money out as quickly as possible, which is what the government was asking us to do. So similarly, in that situation, if you want reassurance about the individual case, then the best thing to do is to write to revenues@cotswold.gov and you get an individual reply to that. But as I said, the team have worked flat out. They've worked all weekend to get as many of these payments through. And I said we've now got to over 1,850 will have been processed today, up to today.
Yeah, and quite an operation as well, Mike.
Yeah.
In the space of 3 weeks, not only have the council had to sort of roll out new systems, but as well, a lot of people have been doing this from home in the comfort of their own home, which is really, really difficult for them.
They have. And there's also the day job for these staff as well. We mustn't remember, yes, we prioritise getting this money out to businesses because we recognise how important it is. But obviously, those staff are normally responsible for administering benefits, council tax benefits, all the other things that they need to do, business rates reliefs as well. So, yeah, absolutely. It's a very busy time. As I said earlier, apologise for people if you've not received the money when you thought you were going to get it, but that's not for want of our officers working really hard to get it out to you.
Thanks, Mike. Got a slightly different theme here. Fred Gardner on Facebook. I guess this is to me. It is in my ward. When will St Michael's Park be reopened in accordance with the government directive? Fred, I'm not sure. Cirencester Town Council are responsible for St Michael's Park, not the District Council. But what I will do as the ward member and as a member of the Town Council is I will get an update for you and I'll get that to you offline and update you with that. But clearly, there are lots of shifting things from government. There seem to be announcements made every other day, don't they? And as councils, the things that relate to us, to all councils, we need to make sure that we're responsive to. So I'll get that checked out for you, and we'll see what we can do. Another one from Leanne Launchbury, again on Facebook. Some councils have chosen to ban the use of sky lanterns. I think these are also known as, or used to be known as Chinese lanterns. Is this something that CDC would consider? Absolutely. We know that they're absolutely terrible for agriculture and just really environmentally very, very bad. On CDC land, they're not allowed, but it's worth saying that CDC doesn't have a lot of land. County Council, for example, have lots of farms, and they rent those out on long leases. The District Council, we have very little land, so it's not really an issue for us with people launching them from our land. So yes, I think we'd all agree that really bad for the environment. We don't want to see them being lit in the Cotswolds, and any land that we do have, we would not allow that. So no.
So that might be one for the Member of Parliament to take up, because it may be something that actually should be legislation coming out nationally that we won't allow those anymore.
Absolutely. I think important to remember, Geoffrey Clifton Brown has his Q&A on a Friday at 3:30 live here from the Barn Theatre. It's a really good opportunity to raise that with him, and I have a weekly conference call with him, so I will make sure that is on the agenda for tomorrow. I think the next call is, so I'll make sure I raise that with him. This is one from Alex White on Facebook. I'm part of a very small company, and we pay for parking permits at the Beaches car park, just opposite here in Cirencester. We're all now working from home and not using them. I know that if I cancel them, I will not be able to get them again, as has happened in the past. Will they be suspended or extended, or will I just need to cancel them, and will I get all of my money back? Mike?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Alex, I don't know the answer to that question. I would need to talk to my cabinet colleague, Councillor Mark Harris, who leads on car parks, to get a detailed answer. I'm not sure it's whether it's something that's been considered by him and his team or not. So we'll have to come back to you with that one.
Okay. Question here from Sue Wilson. Hi, Joe. Why, when the roads are so much quieter, are the large number of potholes not being filled? Potholes, the biggest issue. I certainly know when Mike and I were campaigning in elections, it was always the state of the roads and potholes coming up. I think it's fair to say, like any other sector, the Highways Department have to be really careful to maintain social distancing. I also know, a bit like our waste service, they're down many staff who are having to self-isolate, etc., etc. So it's probably not for the want of trying. I've seen crews out, and I know that there are crews out. I've seen them working, but it's one that I will look into for you. As I mentioned, Highways Department falls underneath the County Council with the District Council, but of course we want to answer as many questions as possible. So I will try and get you a written response, and we will try and see what the story is with Highways. And actually, a really good suggestion. It might be worth us getting somebody from Highways onto the show who can perhaps update us. So we'll take that into account, and we'll try and get somebody from Highways on the show in the next few weeks. A really, really good suggestion. Getting lots of questions in about waste. We are going to come to waste in a second. I'm just going to try and get a few that aren't related to waste. Do you know what? A lot of them are about waste. Here's what we're going to do. We are going to go to the pre-recorded update that Councillor Andrew Doherty did earlier. He's our cabinet member for waste and recycling. We'll have an update from him. He also answered a couple of questions that we had submitted in advance. So what we'll do, we'll go to Councillor Andrew Doherty that I recorded earlier, and we'll come back to some more, and we'll try and answer some more of the questions about waste once we've heard that. Andy, thanks for joining us today. Can you just give us a brief overview then on the waste service and what's been happening over the last week and looking ahead to the next few days?
Okay, so similar situation to when we talked about it before. As of yesterday, we've got about 21 of our permanent staff who are self-isolating. So that's what's having the biggest impact on the service, because those are the people who know where things are and can find that obscure address in the midst of nowhere, halfway between Cirencester and Cheltenham, that nobody else knows the location of. So when those people are missing, that's what has the biggest impact on the service. So that's led to a couple of things. Obviously, that's the garden waste suspension, so we can take the knowledge we have and concentrate that on the core service. The other thing it's had a problem with is not a huge number of people affected, but we've had some problems with people who are being repeatedly missed in terms of their collections. So what we've done is we've got a new team, a new process put together, and they're working through that relatively small number of people, but they're being affected over a number of weeks to work on those problems. So if you're one of those people, you've probably been in contact with me or another one of the team members already, and there's a specialist process going on at the minute to make sure we resolve those and work out the reasons why those collections haven't been happening. Though generally the misses have been probably in the kind of 300, I think, has been our peak over the course of a day or so, which compares to about 30 misses on a normal day. What we've had the bigger problems with are running out of capacity on vehicles. So as we all know, about a week or so ago, we were having a lot of trouble with food. We've put a lot more vehicles with extra drivers on to carry more food. So that's dealt with most of that. Though we had a breakdown on Friday, and obviously that kind of thing leads to problems. And the running problem at the minute is the appeal for people to reduce, reuse, recycle, because the volumes of cardboard and plastic in particular are very high. And that's what's causing problems for the service at the minute, even though we've got extra vehicles out on top of the ones that we would normally run.
Thanks, Andy. That's really handy. I've got a few questions just to put to you while you're on the line. This is a question from Craig on Twitter. With the green bin collection suspended and the recycling centres closed, both understandably, how will the collection of green waste be addressed? Is it permitted to burn waste in a metal incinerator bin?
You can, but I'd say please don't. Do you remember certainly when I was younger, it was normal for all the fields around whichever town you lived in to all be on fire at the end of the summer, because that's what farmers used to do. We stopped doing that because we knew it wasn't a good idea. And I think that's generally true of a lot of incineration. Composting is a much more environmentally friendly option, and it's also much better for your neighbours in terms of not having a disturbance. So I would discourage people from using the burning option. Don't forget, when you're doing compost heap, you need a bunch of brown, relatively dry stuff in there, as well as things like grass clippings. So you want to be saving that kind of material to use for your compost heap anyway.
Thanks, Andy. I've got another question here from Valerie Fletcher on Facebook, talking about fly tipping and how it looks to have increased over the last few weeks since the lockdown, particularly as recycling centres are closed, and obviously the green waste service is suspended. So again, a similar sort of vein. Surely 4 weeks into the lockdown, staff could be reallocated to help the situation. I know staffing allocation is something that is still an issue.
Yeah, there's a few questions along those lines. The simple answer is the staff to reallocate don't exist. The staff who are allocated are all working. There is no one sitting around not doing anything. And the work that they're doing is on the core services. So that's your normal black bin services, your food, everything else that we're collecting on a weekly and bi-weekly basis. So the staff don't exist to reallocate. That's why the garden waste service is suspended. Fly tipping has gone up, but from a relatively low base in the Cotswolds. And that's mostly because most of fly tipping is not actually domestic customers. Most of the problems we have with fly tipping, and we talked about this BBC Points West last week, is coming from building waste and trade waste. So those people who might otherwise be depositing waste somewhere where they're supposed to do it are dumping it somewhere else instead. And that waste is very often coming from customers who have had work done. So one thing to watch out for on the fly tipping front is to remember that it's your responsibility. Your waste, if it is dumped, you are legally responsible for it, even if somebody else did that dumping. So it's important that you check with anyone doing work that they're registered and they are licensed to take your waste, and you ask them questions about where it's going. If they can't give you a sensible answer about where your waste is going, it is not going to the right place. That's your responsibility. That's part of being responsible while we are in difficult times.
Andy, just finally, a question that I know I've had emailed to me a few times over the past few weeks is that clearly we share the same contractor as West Oxfordshire District Council next door to us, and their garden waste service continues. Can you just tell us why theirs is continuing and ours is different when we have the same contractor?
Yeah, every waste authority has an entirely different service, which is part of their slight madness of the national picture of how we do waste in the UK. But in West Oxfordshire, they have a very large grounds maintenance team. And obviously, the grounds maintenance team know where things are because they're used to travelling around their district. So what they've done is they've suspended most of their grounds maintenance work, and they've moved a larger number of those staff across onto the waste service. We have a tiny grounds maintenance team and hardly any land that CDC is directly responsible for. So again, we don't actually have those people to reallocate. So again, it's about that local knowledge, where you can get it from and where you can put it. And West Oxfordshire has a different setup that they're able to use. There's also variation, although garden waste varies. For example, things like some authorities have stopped bulky collections and have stopped delivering new containers, whereas we're still delivering new containers for people and we're still actually managing bulky collections. So different people will have stopped different things. It's not generally the case that there's anyone who has stopped nothing at all. Everyone has different effects on their service.
Andy, thanks very much for joining us. And I thought I sort of just want to add, we get a lot. Waste is the big issue. It's the big issue that district councils deal with. And if you have had a miscollection, I think, again, as I keep saying on a number of issues, please be patient. Leave it on the curbside. It should be collected within the next few days. But also make sure you report it via our website. If you Google Cotswold District Council reporter missed bin collection, you'll find out how you can report that. Because as Andy said last week and the week before, we're only as good as as the information that you supply us with. So if you have had a missed bin collection, please make sure you report it to us. Andy, thanks very much for joining us this afternoon, and we will catch up with you next week. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Joe.
So let's go then to some questions about waste. We've had a lot, and I think Andy should have covered the bulk of the ones that are being asked. But please do keep them coming if you've got more. I'm going to start with one. We're also getting quite a lot of questions about bonfires, which sort of ties in. So what I'll do, I'll just answer one about bonfires, and then we'll come back to waste. We've got them coming in. This is from Jane Viner on Facebook. I note that CDC has asked residents to be considerate and not light bonfires, given smoke worsens COVID-19 symptoms and exacerbates pre-existing respiratory conditions. It also creates tension when so many people are trying hard to respect the lockdown and remain at home. Over the last few weeks, I've noticed many bonfires, probably even more than usual for the time of year, possibly because garden waste is not being collected and or other people are spending more time at home gardening. This was particularly bad over the Easter break when the weather was great and we all had our windows open. Given people are not voluntarily complying, is there any plan for CDC to bring in a fire ban? Not just an issue in villages, even more isolated properties are contributing to the problem. Large bonfire creates huge plumes of smoke that disperse over a very wide area. Really, really important issue, Jane, and one I totally sympathise with. Our advice is people shouldn't be having bonfires, particularly because COVID-19 is a respiratory problem, and equally we don't want to be making that worse. We don't want to be making that worse. I appreciate with garden waste there might be a temptation to do it, but one of the big issues that we face is we've had to suspend the garden waste service. We know that, and we're also trying to advocate to people not to have bonfires. So people are quite rightly going to ask, well, that doesn't leave them with a lot of options. No, you're right, it doesn't, and it's really frustrating, and it's just part of the sacrifices that we're all having to make as a result of the restrictions on our freedoms at the minute. It's really, really frustrating. I've got a garden, the bin's full. Mike, you've got a garden. I imagine the bin's full as well, yeah. And it's one of those really unfortunate situations we're in. We're all having to make sacrifices. Appreciate that. Won't please everybody, but that's what we're on. We've got okie dokie. So James Partridge, are people aware that they can still get rid of furniture, etc., responsibly by using the RHL Still Life Bulky Waste Service? James, if you can post some more information about that, that sounds like good advice, and post that as a response to your comment. That would be really, really useful. Barry Parsons, we are now composting, but it is a long process and has limited capacity during a fast-growing period. Barry, that's great. As we heard last week, home composting is one of the alternatives that you can do. Appreciate if you're doing a lot of gardening, it's probably going to get full quite quickly, but certainly in the first instance, that's something that that you can do. We've got one from Sarah Smalley here in Tetbury. 50% of West Street, Tetbury, was missed last Thursday. I'm guessing you mean general waste collection. Best thing to do, as I said in the pre-record, is report it to the council. Report it to us. If you Google Cotswold District Council report of missed bin collection, that'll take you to the page where you can report a missed bin collection. We're only as good as what we know about. So if we don't know that, if me as a councillor or Andy or Mike, if we don't know that West Street hasn't been collected, not a lot we can do about it. So our teams are trying their best to report back on the ground, but they're busy and under pressure. So if you've had a missed collection, report it to us, and we can get something organised for your street. The other thing as well, I will repeat, if you've had a missed collection, keep it out on the street. The likelihood is another team will be out a bit later on, or even in the day after, or the day after that, to come and collect it. So in a lot of cases we haven't forgotten, but please just make sure you're reporting it so it's on our radar.
Joe, just on that, it's probably worth mentioning to people a lot of the time we're finding now that the lorries are full. So they've basically reached their capacity, so they can't take any more on, so they have to finish halfway down the street, or they can't do over that particular village or that particular road. So in that case, obviously they're aware of it, but as Joe says, if it's reported, then it goes on the list and we make sure it gets picked up. But that's one of the reasons why Andy was talking about people trying to use less, reuse stuff, recycle, all of those things to reduce, so that actually we can get round everywhere. And that's been one of the big challenges, because we're all at home as well, and we're creating more waste because we're there.
Okay, got one here from Rupert Firkins. Any chance a sticker could be put onto all the green bins that have been left out for collection, asking residents to take their green bin back in until collections restart? I guess we could, Rupert. That's one I'm sure Councillor Andrew Doherty's watching, so I'm sure he'll take that into consideration.
I think we could, Joe, but I think the question would be putting a sticker on takes the time of the operative who's doing it, otherwise not emptying somebody's bin. And I think, the communications have gone out. People haven't had their bin collected for several weeks. I know it's gone out through parish councils in my area, I'm sure through the town councils and others. There probably aren't many people that don't realise that we're not collecting garden waste at the moment. What I understand is there might be people who think, well, it might restart this week, so I'll put it out. I think we will take that suggestion back for when we're about to restart, and we may well put the sticker on, the week before we restart to tell people.
Absolutely. I'm going to go right back to you, Mike. Isn't it about time the council made a sensible comment about the green waste instead of just saying no date has been set? If other councils can reinstate them, why can't CDC? And that's from Mike Jelly on Facebook. Mike?
I think it's sensible to say we can't provide that service at the moment, and I think Andy Doherty explained why we can't provide that service at the moment. We're about to, moving into a recovery phase as a council, and clearly we're going to look at how we could provide the service going forward. We don't have the answer to that at the minute, but certainly we're aware that people do want us the service back, and they're missing it. But we can only tell people things when we've got something to say. So we're aware that people would like the service to come back.
So, Mike, on that point around recovery, because recovery is going to be key, and it's a bit ambiguous at the minute as to what that actually means. We've been looking at some figures this week, haven't we, around the council's finances? And I think in the interest of transparency, it's probably worth sharing those with the public about the financial challenge that we're likely to face. Do you want to just offer a comment on that?
When I was on this programme 2 weeks ago, we had the earliest figures done then to suggest that the impact on the council's finances was a loss of £250,000 a month while the lockdown continues. We've now done more work on that, and it's looking at £520,000 a month where that we are under our revenue income that we would expect, and for the benefit of people watching, overall our income to the council is just over £24 million. So it's £500,000 for every month that our car parks are shut, for example. The planning applications are down, our leisure centres are shut. So all of those things are reducing the income into the council. So yes, absolutely, we as a council are looking at how we can recover out of this. I'm sure like all other organisations out there are doing this. How do we deal with the circumstances that the pandemic has caused, and how do we find our way out of it? And that's work that is underway now.
Thanks, Mike. I've got a question here from Rosemary Andrews. Fascinating that all the people invited onto this show come from either an independent or Liberal Democratic or Green persuasion, as if no wards with Conservative councillors are doing anything. So much for us all being in this together and working together at this time of crisis. Well, Rosemary, what I'd say to you is I think it's important that at a time as important as this, a time of national crisis, we put politics aside. I think that's absolutely vital. I think as well, we've invited, Mike, you've been in the meetings, we've invited Conservative councillors on, our independent councillor, Green councillor, all councillors are welcome to come and input onto this show. And I think we're going to be joined by a Conservative councillor next week, just confirming that. So I think the key point to make, Rosemary, is that politics at the minute doesn't exist as far as I'm concerned. We're all in this together. We all need to rally round as a community and work together. We'll leave politics at the door. Thanks very much.
Joe, could I just add to maybe for Rosemary's benefit to let her know that the cabinet meetings that we're having informally via web services at the moment, we're inviting Conservative members onto that as well as the independent and Green members, so that they're part of the process, getting the briefings that we as the administration are getting and can put their input into the discussion. So yeah, as Joe says, it's a strange time. We are working together very collaboratively, and there isn't a party division in how things are moving at the moment.
Absolutely. I've got one here from slightly change of tack. Can you please confirm what CDC are doing about leisure facilities in Tetbury and Fairford after COVID-19? Obviously, we remember that there was I think it's last summer now, wasn't it? It feels like an age ago. The leisure facilities there closed where the school decided they couldn't continue with them anymore.
Sorry,
Mike, I am looking at you. I'm sorry.
You're looking at me, Joe.
Yes.
I'm not aware of anything specifically that's happened in the intervening time with regards to that. Obviously, all of our other leisure centres are closed at the moment. Maybe that's one, as it's within Councillor Jenny Ford's portfolio, to ask her directly whether there has been any more recent discussions with the groups in Fairford and Tetbury, but I'm not aware of them.
Yeah, I think the other thing to say is just before we went into the COVID-19 lockdown, we're in the advanced stages of developing a leisure strategy for the Cotswolds. That's going to be really important in the future, and probably more important after this COVID-19 pandemic. So the leisure strategy will look at what we're investing in terms of leisure facilities, in terms of health and well-being. So I think what I'd say in the short term is wait for that leisure strategy to come out, and also, as Mike has said, have a chat with Councillor Jenny Ford-Collin, who I know that I think you've had some correspondence with in the past. James Partridge, who was telling people about the RH Hill bulky waste service. For $14.99, you can still have residential white goods and furniture removed. So, James, I think we'll follow up with you on that, and that could be really useful. One from Rob Miller. As suggested by Mike Evemy earlier, I've just called CDC inquiring about our grant application submitted on the 30th of March. The short answer, our application is with accounts. This should have been paid. The suggestion was to call again on the 24th of this month. Mike, probably worth contacting you directly, I'd suggest, and maybe you can have a look into that.
Yeah, if you'd like to. I mean, clearly, if you've spoken to the officer concerned, I would hope that they will be able to give you the answer that when your payment is expected to be made. Clearly, that's what I would expect them to give to me if I asked about it.
Okey-dokey. Folks, I'm being told in my ear that we need to start wrapping things up. We'll be back again next week from 3:30 live on Cotswold District Council's Facebook page, the Barn Theatre's Facebook page, and indeed my Councillor page. So join us then. We're going to have a number of guests. We're going to be joined by a couple of representatives from Gloucestershire Police. They'll be giving us an update on what policing they're doing and really policing this quite extraordinary piece of legislation that has us all locked in our homes. And they'll also be taking questions and answers. Many questions that residents have asked have been around what you can do in the lockdown and what you can't do. And the police will be here to answer your questions on that. We'll have Andy Doherty back in the studio answering your questions about waste. We've had lots of them. We know it's the big issue. We want to ensure that as many questions as possible are answered. We're also going to be joined by a representative from the Cotswolds Citizens Advice Bureau, hearing about the amazing work that they're doing in this really, really difficult time for residents across the Cotswolds. So thank you, folks. Again, our apologies once again for the issues around business grants. Please get in touch with us if you continue to have problems. Email me, joe.harris@cotswold.gov.uk. Email Mike, mike.evemy@cotswold.gov.uk, and we will do our best to follow up on any of your queries, comments or concerns. Thank you very much and see you next week.
In March 2018, we opened our doors to the public with a vision not just to create challenging professional theatre, but to use this as a platform to inspire and bring communities together. Theatre and culture build identity. With theatre and culture in our local life, the community landscape is more vibrant. Local life is enriched. We believe that the benefits of theatre should be available for everyone. Our Theatre for All programme has removed financial barriers, giving disadvantaged people access to the theatre free of charge.
So we were told that we'd come here and have a Christmas meal and then go and watch A Christmas Carol.
Our aim is to make live professional theatre available to everyone and use that experience for positive change. Theatre can be transformational in young lives. Our academy is now in its 4th year, and we continue to build on our vision of bringing the best performing arts tuition to the heart of the Cotswolds. We work hard to make our academy as inclusive and as accessible as possible. Discounts apply for parents with more than one child. Our bursaries help support talented children from less affluent backgrounds. The Academy creates a fun and challenging environment where children can build friendships and develop key skills not just for theatre, but for life. We are also able to provide real opportunities for students who wish to pursue careers in the arts.
My name is Harry Apps. I am currently playing Marius in Les Miserables in the West End.
Barn outreach and learning programs engage with thousands of people. Our free workshops support the drama curriculum in local schools. Singing and musical theatre workshops in community groups and care homes have helped address issues of isolation. Our Song for Cirencester project in aid of mental health charities brought our community together in an unprecedented way. We've collaborated with many charities in the region, including the Churn Project, to support individuals dealing with the barriers to finding work.
Since working with you, my life's changed. It's given me some purpose, given me an interest, some confidence I was lacking prior to all this.
The Barn Theatre played a pivotal role in the town's 2018 World War I centenary celebrations. Who could forget our record-breaking Human Poppy? Our live streaming work on the annual Advent Festival helped thousands engage and take part in Cirencester's Christmas festivities. In these times of uncertainty, we strive to keep the community together. The theatre may be temporarily closed, but our commitment to you goes on. Even now, our amazing costume department are helping the NHS by making scrubs for frontline workers. We've used our technology to build a free live streaming service that provides much needed community news and entertainment for all the family, broadcasting every day to keep us all connected. We are not just a theatre. We are the Barn.